then what I was saying is, you might feel confused if you have people in your life who have a personality disorder. I know quite a few people, simply because I studied psychology and I went to the psych ward, so I have actually seen patients with it who are being treated, not specifically borderline, but with personality disturbance. So, but also friends, and just observing how they react to certain situations. And what this video was saying is that the person will behave in a way that's opposite to what they actually desire or what they actually know is the right thing to do. I might say the exact opposite. Sometimes intentionally, maybe to get attention, but a lot of the time it's they behave in a different way to what they have been raised to know is right. And it becomes a habit. And so a lot of the time they have this inner conflict where they know what they're doing is wrong, but they're doing it anyway. And they know that they might be hurting people, and they know that maybe their habits are incorrect. But they behave that way anyway because they just can't stop themselves. There is chemicals and imbalances and problems in the brain functioning which causes this, which is why it's known as abnormal psychology. But somebody who has a relatively healthy personality will know that this is wrong, so they'll choose not to do it, and they'll get into a habit of just behaving a certain way. And if they make a mistake, a moral mistake or whatever mistake, they will feel bad for it, and then they will problem solve and think, how do I make sure that I don't make that mistake again? How do I make sure that how do I make sure that that doesn't happen again? And so they can almost make peace with the choices that they make, and they can live functionally and content within themselves. But there'll be discontent for people with personality disorder because they maybe know that what they're doing is incorrect, and that maybe it's unhealthy, or they're hurting other people unintentionally, but they do it anyway. So it's not out of vindictiveness, but they behave that way anyway, even if it hurts other people and themselves. And that was interesting for me because I am instinctive and I do sense people's spirits, and it does make sense that there would be that inner conflict. Oh, I know that this is right, but I'm going to do that. I know that this is right, but I'm going to say that. I know this person wants this, but I'm going to prolong it on purpose to do this. It's done on purpose for whatever reason. But there's this inner guilt, or this inner consciousness that says this isn't a good idea, but they do it anyway. And that's, I think, what I sometimes sense, because I am an empath and I do sense people's spirits, and if the spirit is conflicted, or the spirit is hurt, or the spirit is angry. So generally, somebody who has a healthy personality will be at peace with who they are and the choices that they make, because they have a look at their nature, and they have a look at their morality, and they have a look at how they behave, and they're at peace with the mistakes they've made, but they're also at peace with the fact that they've learned from their mistakes. They're at peace with the fact that they behave the way that they want to behave, the way that they know that socially they're expected to behave, and they're okay with it. Okay? But what's interesting about this in application, or in practical application, is BPD. Their sense of image is unclear, as in they don't know who they are and who they want to be and where they're going. Their goals are unclear. And so sometimes we do all go through phases where our goals change and shift. But with with the person with BPD is that they have intense emotions that go with that. So they don't handle the stress of I don't know very well. Their likes and dislikes might shift and be confusing and cause them to feel uncomfortable. This causes confusion or unclear sense of contentment and identity. Then it says they tend to be very sensitive in general, but so they tend to be very sensitive with incoming information toward them, but they're very harsh with how they explain themselves and how they behave. They're very intense with how they react. So with information coming in, they're very sensitive and they're very harsh with other people. So sometimes, because they're sensitive, sometimes the small things will cause them to be triggered and cause them to react in an intense way that doesn't make sense, because a normal healthy person would not get explosively angry over something. They might get irritated if they're burnt out or they're tired, then the sleep or the rest will help it. But on average, they won't rage over small things. And then once they're upset and they're rageful, it's difficult to calm them down. And so for a person who's in a friendship, or if it's a parent raising the kid with BPD, or if you're in a romantic relationship, for the person who's on the outside watching this, they feel like that there's emotional volatility, the inability for the person to self-soothe themselves, because usually self-regulation is self-soothing, right? And being able to be like, okay, calm down, breathe, think clearly, problem solve, rational, right? But when you're watching the BPD, the person using emotional volatility, and you see that they're not really able to self-soothe. And then once they're in that state of rage, because of the difficult and strong emotions that they feel, there's the inability to think straight and to stay grounded. And so then what they'll do is either they'll speak out or they'll act out in an abusive way, or toward other people, or they'll be that way toward themselves. You're an idiot, you're this, you're worthless, you're whatever, da, 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 da. And they'll act out and they'll cut themselves, or they'll drink too much and maybe need their stomach to be pumped. So, but the problem with that is after the behavior they feel shame and they feel guilt and they feel terrible. Whereas a healthy person will see it as, that was a mistake, let's not do that again. Let me ask for forgiveness, let me move on. Let me forgive myself, let me move on. And then it is possible that their thoughts, feelings and behaviors are out of control most of the time. With the emotional swings, this is interesting, with the emotional swings, they can shift easily between sadness, happy, anger, irritability. They shift very quickly from one emotional state to the next. And this is, I think, why it can be confusing for somebody who's got a healthy personality, because they're like, 1 second you're happy and now you're rageful, but they come from, well, now you're crying over what? Why are you crying over this? It can come across as strange.